Welcome to Healthy Births, Happy Babies, where we share tips, tools, and stories grounded in natural childbirth and parenting principles, so that instead of feeling overwhelmed and confused during this exciting time in your life, you feel safe, supported, and empowered in your childbirth and parenting journey. And now, here's your host, Dr. Jay Warren.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Healthy Births, Happy Babies. I'm Dr. Jay Warren. I'm the prenatal and pediatric chiropractor here at the Cap Wellness Center. And today's guest is Barbara Harper. She is the world's leading expert on water birth, and that's a title I'm sure she would not give herself. It's something I would definitely describe her as, because she literally travels all over the world teaching not only gentle birth choices, which is the title of her book, but water birth. She's the founder of Water Birth International. She's been the leader in teaching water birth, not just as a technique to parents as an option for birth, but really teaching it to the birth professionals around the world. She's invited to hospitals in China and India and Europe, as well as the States. And she's taken time out of her very busy schedule to chat with us today and explain all of the benefits of water birth, not just in a physiological sense for easing labor for the mom, but really the benefits for the baby. She really is a proponent of every baby deserves a gentle birth. And the message she has to share with us today is just really powerful, really beautiful. It was a wonderful conversation to have with her, and I'm really happy to share it with you here today. So now let me introduce to you our guest, Barbara Harper. Barbara Harper has dedicated her life to changing the way we welcome babies into the world and is an internationally recognized expert on water birth and gentle births. She founded Water Birth International in 1988 with one goal in mind: to ensure that water birth is an available option for all women. During the past 4 decades, Barbara has worked as an obstetric and pediatric nurse, midwife, midwifery instructor, childbirth educator, doula, and doula trainer, and has used her vast experience to develop unique seminars where she teaches within hospitals, nursing schools, midwifery, and medical schools and community groups worldwide. Her best-selling book and DVD, Gentle Birth Choices, has been translated into 9 languages, and her next book, Embracing the Miracle: The Science, Safety, and Spirit of Birth in Water, will be ready for publication next year. She has 3 adult children, 2 of whom were born at home in water, and 1 grandson in college. She lives in Boca Raton, Florida, where she is active in the community as a volunteer and as a midwifery and doula mentor. So with that, let me switch over to our conversation with Barbara Harper. All right, Barbara, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Dr. Warren. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Yeah, we've got so many questions about water birth because our listeners are, pregnant women really looking for the most natural, safe, gentle way of bringing their babies into the world. And as they do their due diligence, water birth really comes up. And so in answering or trying to answer their questions, I figure let's bring the authority on. Let's have you come here, share your wisdom and your messaging. And we heard, obviously, in your bio just a few minutes ago as I was introducing the program, your amazing accomplishments, how long you've been doing this. But before we jump into the details about all the benefits and questions about water birth, tell us a little bit more about how way back when you even got interested in water birth to become such an expert and, spending your days now traveling all over the world teaching it.
Well, we don't have a whole lot of time, so I'll put it in a little capsule. And the fact that I am a mother and I gave birth 38 years ago in a hospital, that was my daughter, and 32 years and 30 years ago to my 2 sons at home in water. And while I was preparing for during my pregnancy with my second baby, I had been introduced to the concept of water birth a year before. And I immediately thought, oh my gosh, this makes sense. The baby grows in fluid, comes out in fluid. It's still attached to the umbilical cord. The placenta is still feeding oxygen and nutrition. And the baby goes from the protected warm space of the womb into the protected warm space of an expanded womb, kind of like a womb with a view. And I couldn't find any scientific literature. When I drove down to Los Angeles, I was living in Santa Barbara. And went to UCLA Medical Center to the medical library and couldn't find one single published article. That was 1983. Michel Odent came out with his first one. Was a doctor in France at the time in October of 1983, and this was about March, April of 83. So I kind of took it on faith, but then while I was pregnant, I got on a plane and my husband and I went to France, went to PTVA, met with Frédéric Laboyer, and I was schooled in the benefits of laboring in water. And the benefits of laboring in water are complete freedom of movement. I watched as women moved and responded to their baby's movements in their pelvis, in their body. So they didn't have to lie on their backs on a bed with their feet up in stirrups, and they could get in and out of the water whenever they wanted. And so I remember asking the midwives at the hospital PTVA, which is about 100 kilometers south of Paris, where Michel Odent worked. And I said, do women ever give birth in the water? Does the baby emerge in the water? And the midwife looked at me like I was stupid. And she says, yes, but of course, it's a possibility. And who am I to tell her where she can give birth and where she can't give birth? And Michel Odent has always said the same thing, that it's a possibility. And when I'm teaching parents, I always say that water birth is not the goal. Like, to birth the baby in the water is not the goal. You need to follow the innate promptings of your body and your brain and your hormones and the baby. And if at the baby's crowning and you feel like getting up and squatting beside the tub, that's perfectly fine. But if all things being equal, you feel comfortable and you don't want to move, then everybody around you should support you in letting your baby out into this nice warm pool of water. And it is safe and it is comfortable for the baby and it is gentle for the baby. And that's why I've devoted my career to informing both the public and the professionals on exactly how to do this, how to set it up, what to look for, who can get in the tub, who can't get in the tub, all the parameters to make it absolutely 100% safe.
Yeah. And I think the biggest or the most common question I get around water birth is when we're talking about it, the eyebrows go up and you see the gears turning and be like, well, wait a minute, like as soon as they come out, they're yelling, then they're going to drown in the water. So can you explain to our listeners a little bit about the physiology of birth in that process of the first breath of life and how that works with the water birth?
Well, Jay, I was just at a hospital near Cincinnati, Ohio, and I had all of the physicians. I had the pediatricians didn't come. I wish they had, but I had all of the midwives, all of the nurses over a 2-day period and different seminars. And when I start a seminar, I give a brief introduction and then go right into the physiology of what prevents a baby from breathing and what causes us as human beings to take our first breath. And because I know that that's the first question that I'm always going to get. So let's cover it right out of the chute. Mm-hmm. And there are 4 mechanisms present in fetuses that prevent them from breathing inside the womb and inhaling or gasping. And I'm not going to take today to enumerate those, but what I'd like to do is give you an article that I wrote that you can post on your website or give to the listeners that tells everything in detail. Absolutely. Okay. But the biggest thing is our hormones as we're laboring, as we're preparing for labor, they change and they shift and the levels shift and our prostaglandin levels rise to the point where the creator of the evolution of our birth process wanted to ensure that babies did not expand their chest walls in and out as in respiration during the birth process. We want that upper body and torso to be as small as it possibly can be to fit through the birth canal. Now, let me just talk about breech positions for a moment. A breech position is perfectly safe, and that baby cannot possibly take a breath while its head is still in the vagina, and the water baby is perfectly safe and cannot possibly physiologically take a breath while it's in the womb, in the birth canal, or the head hanging on the perineum in the water, or the whole body is out in the water. The prevention is part of that prostaglandin rise that takes the breathing mechanism, takes the practice breathing that was done in utero, and takes it offline. It says this program is not going to work during the birth process. And the very first thing that a baby does, whether it's born on the bed or in the water, I call them turf and surf. Okay. So the turf baby comes out, and normally its head is exposed right away. Its face is exposed to 14.7 pounds per square inch of gravity that it didn't have in the womb. And that's the signal to this human brain that says, welcome to spaceship Earth. And on Earth, we breathe oxygen and expel carbon dioxide. And within the next 3 minutes, your oxygen system is going to shut down, and you're going to be now doing respirations. And to make that happen is a complex chain of reactions that goes from that initiation of here's gravity, here's the presence of oxygen molecules in the atmosphere that stimulate our fifth cranial nerve, our trigeminal nerve, and our brain switches our cerebral spinal fluid to slightly acidotic, and the shunts in the heart are signaled to close, which closes off the bypass to the placenta, and all of a sudden blood rushes in through the pulmonary arteries and the pulmonary veins, engorging the lungs with blood for the first time. During the neonatal period, the fetus only receives 8% of its cardiac output into the lung bed. And all of a sudden, immediately after birth, that increases to 55%. So before a baby can breathe, it must be perfused. And so we need to leave the cord attached long enough for at least 3 minutes more, preferably 10 minutes more of the blood from the placenta going to the baby. Once that perfusion happens, then the fluid that was inside the lungs gets pulled out into the capillaries that surround every single one of our lung cells, and it kind of opens it up like tent poles open up a tent, and then the bronchioles dilate, and air actually the baby exhales before it inhales. And it's just such a miraculous process, and none of that can take place until the water baby or the breech baby's face hits that gravity and gets its ticket to spaceship Earth.
It's
How
such
about
an
that?
incredible physiological process. The innate wisdom of the body never ceases to amaze me, that all of that can happen within an instant, and thank God we don't have to think about it ourselves to do it.
Well, and I ask women all the time, did you have control over how your baby's lung cells developed, or the eyelashes, or the skin, or the hair, or the vernix, or the fingernails? Well, the baby has a program, a perfectly balanced, perfectly wired neurobehavioral program. It has a behavior in the womb that is perfect for that place. It knows exactly what to do. And it has a behavior after it is out, such as switching over from fetal circulation to newborn circulation, breathing, getting microbiota into the gut. It has and then crawling to the breast and attaching. Well, if it has two perfect behavioral programs that are neurologically hardwired in, do you think it also might have a perfectly hardwired behavioral program for birth as well? And because it's one process, the process of gestation doesn't end, it keeps going. And so yes, the baby has the ability to be born even if the mother were in a deep relaxed state, even if the mother were unconscious, even if the mother had no arms, no hands, and didn't push at all. And when I show films that show this and show the baby crawling to the breast, women are like, oh my gosh, how does that happen? Well, the baby is perfectly hardwired with this neurobehavioral program, and it's we who interfere with it.
And I think that's been my experience as well in teaching kind of normal physiological birth premises is a lot of the dots get connected around, okay, this is really happening. It's the most natural thing in the world. And what I also see is it takes a lot of pressure off of mom in that she doesn't have to do as much, which in our culture, it seems like, all right, you got to rock this birth, mama, like you have to do it and you have to do this thing. And one of your messages that I'd love for you to expand on is kind of taking the shift away from or shift to the natural rhythms and movements of the baby during the birth rather than it having to be mama doing something.
Well, not every woman needs to push. Sometimes she does, but let's talk about just the physiologic birth that you mentioned. So this perfectly hardwired baby that has a program that knows how to maneuver through the pelvis. There are innate reflexes that get it into the pelvis and out of the pelvis and up to the breast. And those reflexes, the asymmetric tonic neck reflex, the galant reflex, the Perez reflex. The Perez reflex is actually an extension of the head, an extension of the sacrum. And when those two things happen, it naturally rotates. And then as the baby's head is out, I wish we had video as well going on here, but as the baby's head is out, it can sit on the perineum while that program runs its directions. And all of a sudden, the best thing to do is leave your hands off, relax the bottom, let the baby out. We don't have to go push, 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 push and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and hold your breath, because that interferes with the baby's program. Yes, we have this incredible urge to push, but what I ask my clients to do when I'm acting as a midwife or a doula, I ask my clients to sing, to open their throat, to let the sound out, for that whole contraction, and take a quick breath between that, and that's an expulsive effort. I like the way it is in Spanish. The words in Spanish are the dilation, expulsion, and placenta. So dar a luz, going to the light, means labor in Spanish. And it's one complete process instead of this first stage, second stage, third stage. Just consider it's one complete birth process. And so this baby, if we switch our orientation a little bit and realize that the baby is the driver and the mother's the vehicle, and the mother's powerful contractile forces of the uterus combined with the neurobehavioral programming of the baby as the driver allow the birth to happen. And I have watched this dozens and hundreds of times where a mother is so completely relaxed that she doesn't even know her baby's out yet, especially when it's in the water. But I've seen it on land as well.
And Dr. Michelle O'Donnell was on the podcast a couple months ago talking about the same thing of like letting a birth happen rather than making a birth happen. And I think that's a very powerful paradigm shift.
It is indeed. And when that happens, I see it in the eyes and the faces of the doctors and the nurses and the midwives that I teach. The light bulb goes on, and two doctors in Cincinnati came up to me afterwards and said, I had no idea everything you've just taught me is antithetical to what I learned in medical school. Help me so that I can sit on my hands and experience this. Will you come back and supervise us? Will you come back and be here so that I don't ruin this? And ruin's not a very good word, but so that I can protect the mother and protect the baby so that they can express this.
That's incredible. Are you going back?
Of course I'll go back.
Yay, good. No, I mean, that's just such a light bulb moment for a doctor to shift that. So being that much more supportive, that's incredible.
I'm pretty singular in what I do as far as the water birth movement, but I have empowered thousands of midwives out there. And one of my friends, you probably know her, Lisa Oxenham Sanchez. She's in the Southern California area. She posted a video of a water birth of one of her clients on Facebook, and it made the rounds, went viral, even made the news reports. It was on BBC television, and she gave an interview and she said, well, I learned all this from Barbara Harper. And to be able to take the video instead of getting in there and delivering the baby's head and suctioning the baby. There's so many things, Jay, that interfere with that natural, innate childbearing intelligence that both the mother and the baby possess.
Right. Well, and we were talking before we started the interview about your travel schedule and how you're traveling all over the world teaching this, and you're being invited all over the world. You said you're not seeking out these engagements, you're being requested, and thankfully you're passionate so much about it. You're going to China, to Prague, Tel Aviv, India. So it seems like, I don't want to say the world is changing, but I mean, it sounds like the world is changing in certain areas and wanting to incorporate this. Has that been something you've noticed just recently changing, or has that been a slow process over your career?
Well, I stood in front of an audience in China in May of 2,500 midwives, and many of them had already taken my classes, and that's why they were there. I've been going back and forth to China since 2005, so 13 years almost. And it has shifted in China. There's more awareness in China. We started doula trainings and OB trainings, and there are literally now hundreds of hospitals in China. The very first hospital I went to work in Shanghai, the Chaoning Hospital, has had over 8,000 water births in one hospital. And we see the responses of the parents. I teach classes to parents, and a parent class for me, when I have a private parent class, is usually about 6 couples, and we go for 5 or 6 weeks, and I teach hypnosis and things like that. But in China, I'm put in front of 500 parents, 500 couples, and I have a few hours to change their perspectives on birth and empower them with information that will give them the confidence that they can birth without interference. So you have to do both. You have to educate the parents and kind of erase some of the cultural images that we have of women being helpless, and replace that with these beautiful videos that are available. on water birth and gentle birth, and then at the same time, and this was my original prescription when I first founded Water Birth International in 1987, was let's educate the parents, but at the same time educate the providers, so that when the parents go asking for this, there will be providers that have that new paradigm of understanding the absolute pristine elegance of the human body. And now I have partners all over the world, Gail Tully with Spinning Babies, and of course, Ina May Gaskin and all of her work, and Niels Bergman with Skin to Skin, and I bring all of those into my seminars so that people understand the connectedness of all of this. And it is a miracle, and that's why I'm calling my next book, the title of my next book is called Embracing the Miracle. Embracing the Miracle, the Science, Safety, and Spirit of Birth and Water.
And when will that be available, Barbara?
Well, I am self-publishing, and we're simultaneously releasing it in English, Spanish, Portuguese, and Chinese. And we're looking at early 2018.
Okay.
So it'll go into print toward the end of 2017, but I have to take a break from my international travel so I can sit home and write.
Right. Good for you. Well, and tell us about the Gentle Birth Choices, though, is available now. How can people get that reference from you?
Well, it's Gentle Birth Choices was published in 2005, so it's also 12 years old, and there is a free DVD in the back, and the video is still powerful. Just ignore the hairdos and the absence of cell phones. There's 6 births on the film: a floor birth, a squatting birth, a toilet birth, 2 water births, and it's as powerful today as it was then, because babies still come out the same way. But it is available on Amazon. If you order the Kindle version, you'll just get the book. But if you order the book itself, it comes with the free DVD.
Okay. And I'll make sure to have the links to, one, the article that you mentioned earlier in our conversation, but then also links to your website, as well as to be able to find the book, the waterbirth.org, and to get that book, Gentle Birth Choices, because to further this conversation, people to have more and more references and to be able to talk with their birth provider about it as they're getting ready for their birth, like the more references they have, the better.
Well, ACOG, the American College of Obstetricians, came out with a statement all the way back in 2005, and they have gotten lighter on the statement, and they acknowledge that water is great for labor. Their most recent statement this month in 2016, in November of 2016, said, yeah, go ahead and labor in water, but we don't recommend that you birth in water. But if you read the whole entire statement, they say, but if you're going to anyway, there's no evidence that says that it's bad. And there's no evidence that says that it's good. So and you continue to read their statement. And if you're a hospital that has a water birth program, just make sure you have education protocols in place, and you don't do anything stupid. And that's why I go out and educate them. And insurance companies for some hospitals require my certification course before they put their hands in the water or set up a tub at those particular facilities.
Well, in our last minutes, Barbara, like, what's the major take-home message you'd like a mom listening to this conversation to leave with? Whether it's something we touched on already, and you want to reiterate, or maybe even something we didn't talk about yet.
Well, one of my bylines is, every baby deserves a gentle birth. And I would like to change baby to body. Every body deserves a gentle birth. And that goes for the mother as well. The gentleness of the people around her, setting up the environment. There's certain things that you can do to support yourself and to have those around you support you, whether it's in water, out of water, on the toilet, what I call the porcelain self-cleansing birthing stool. But She can have the low lights, the love, the intimacy, put on the music that you like, and birth happens between your ears, not your legs. In other words, how you think and how you process what's happening to you, just know that you are safe. God gave us a powerful system of the creator of the universe gave us a powerful system in order to carry on our progeny. And generation after generation after generation, Lador Vador, Lador Vador, that's Hebrew for from generation to generation. We have done this, and modern medicine is only about 100 years out. So, so mothers, make yourself as comfortable as possible and feel safe, and let the baby out.
And what about for the baby? Like maybe a baby that's listening to mama hasn't arrived here yet, listening through mama, getting ready for their own birth, or maybe a baby that's listening through on mama's chest. What pearl of wisdom would you like to whisper in their little ear?
I am a baby whisperer for a very long time, Jay. And I talk to babies. I talk to babies in the womb. I hear them. I sometimes report back, but I ask every mother to put her hands on her baby, on her belly, and just say three things. I love you. I want you. I trust you. And when the baby's out, I want her to whisper to that baby and make the baby feel so safe on her chest that this baby hardwires in its brain, I'm in the right place, I'm doing the right thing, and it's the right time. And every cell of my being is connected with every cell and wave and possibility of the universe. And I am limitless in my capacity and in my love.
That is absolutely beautiful. I have goosebumps just listening to you, Barbara. Thank you for that. Thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom. You are such a busy woman doing so many great things. I really appreciate you taking the time to share it with our listeners.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Thank you for joining us today. For more information about this episode and other natural childbirth and parenting topics, please visit us at capwellnesscenter.com or message us on our Facebook page with any questions you might have. We here at the Cap Wellness Center look forward to helping you and your family be as happy and healthy as you can be.